is Musqueam, Squamish, Nuu-chah-nulth, Nuu-chah-nulth, touching Momathi, Na Quapkanas, Quapatias Natanaximid, Akshin could teach to Subtapati, Wakashkra was Haspi.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, everybody, for coming out. My name is Wamish. My English name is Ken Watts. Just helping MC today and help us get through this morning. And on behalf of the Five Nations, we also want to thank the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh for allowing us here in their territory. And we'd like to start off today with a statement from our president of our Nuu-chah-nulth Tribal Council, representing our 14 First Nations, President Judith Sayers.
Good morning, everyone. It's great to be here on the Coast Salish territories of the Squamish, Musqueam, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples. I'm accompanied here by the Vice President, Andy Calicum. You know, Trudeau's in town today, and if he thought reconciliation was the most important thing and his most important relationship, he'd be standing with us today and telling us, we're going to resolve this. 10 years later, we're still here. We're dealing with a court ruling that said our rights are frozen in time and that we're only entitled to a low-cost, local, artisanal fishery that isn't even economically viable. Today, we ask these three justices of the appeal to open their minds and their hearts to what's important to Nuu-chah-nulth. This is our way of life. It's always been our way of life. The fishery, the commercial fishery, has been a part of us for so long. So it's great to have so many supporters here today. We thank the 6 interveners that are First Nations that are here, and we look forward to hearing the arguments over the next 5 days. And thank you very much for being here. Kleko, kleko.
My apologies. We are actually going to be welcomed by Leah George Wilson from the Tsleil-Waututh and also co-chair of the First Nations Summit. So, Leah, careful.
Isiamesiaya, I Tanashqualawan, quick knowledge, Mitzam Kutwilam Tunatamoch to Huelmoch. Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, Squamish, Haitzepka, Nuu-chah-nulth. Greetings to our honored guests and my dear ones. My name is Leah George Wilson, Sitsia Ama from the Tsleil-Waututh Nation, thanking all of you for welcoming all of you to Coast Salish territory, home to Tsleil-Waututh, Musqueam, and Squamish. Thanking and raising our hands to the Nuu-chah-nulth people for staying in this fight for all of us. Everything that you do benefits all of us, and for that we raise our hands. Haitzepka.
Thank you, Leah, and once again, thank you to the Tsleil-Waututh, Musqueam, and Squamish people. Next we'll have a statement from the Five Nations, from the Hausit, the Haudenosaunee, the Heshquit, the Nuu-chah-nulth, and Tlaloquit First Nations. Lead negotiator for Hausit, Wiccaninish, Cliff Hatleo.
Good morning. Isn't it an awesome day? It's a day we're going to defeat the government. Yes, hardball is going to happen. Last week in an issue stuck shit no chaksa so train out we can hanakwe halo kokum you kwexak tai how which makuna how which Sakashwiha, Hawis, Aapwake. I sit in the house of Aapwake, Sakashpeet. Proud to be a speaker on behalf of Ahousaht, on behalf of the 4 other nations. We are fighting for a way of life, like our president mentioned. No question about that. And you know, our tribe, we fought a war over salmon. Access to salmon in the early 1800s. A 13-year war, which we won for that salmon. And here we are continuing to fight in this modern day for that way of life. What we're fighting for as well, besides the way of life, is a healthy diet. We are suffering from not having access to healthy foods from the ocean. And so we have embarked here in British Columbia on a good path as it pertains to health. And our fight with the government over the recognition of our right to harvest and commercially sell. You know, I proudly say that I'm old enough to remember when we depended on no one but ourselves. When we stood on our own 2 feet and looked after our nation. People in our nation and First Nation country in Canada, they couldn't understand homelessness. They couldn't understand people getting hungry. Why? Because what's the matter with these people? They don't look after each other? Well, we did. We have those values and we have those teachings, and that's what we're fighting for. I want to thank our leadership from the Union of Chiefs, from the BC AFN, First Nations Summit, and Hailsuk Tribal Council, represented by Reg Moody, for supporting us, because indeed, all of our people have been attacked by this recent decision on justification. And so we're going to push back and we're going to win.
Thanks, Wicanish. So once again, we have many supporters here today, and we'll start with the Union of BC Indian Chiefs. We have the President, Grand Chief Stuart Phillip, as well as Vice President, Chief Bob Chamberlain.
Why castle how ibis nexil isquist aimshan. I just said greeting my friends and relatives. My traditional name is Aimshan Joan Phillip. I was born and raised in North Vancouver, and when we lived there, 90% of our diet was marine protein. So fish wasn't something we ate on Friday. It was every single day, prepared 1,000 different ways. So I'm just so proud of Nuu-chah-nulth for the 2nd time standing up our salmon. And there's no doubt in my mind, we will win. We will win this fight. Because it's not just something that we eat today. We need to save those resources for our future generations. Together, Stuart and I have 5 children and 15 grandchildren. And right now they can't harvest clams or crabs or oysters in North Van anymore. But our community at home has been working hard to ensure that happens again. So thank you for standing up for the salmon.
Gail Kessler, Nuu-guam, Gilakame Gashanaka Kuchvasitinu Kukwatmis, Wuskamak Taudenoch. Chief Bob Chamberlain, Vice President, Union of BC Indian Chiefs. It is indeed an honor to stand with the Nuu-chah-nulth today on the courts, the steps of the courts yet again. And the fact that it is yet again is a very dismal and sad comment on the Canadian government's approach to reconciliation with First Nations people. The fact that it is 10 years later and the Nuu-chah-nulth are still here trying to have the government step back, trying to have the government recognize who they are as people, and the wild salmon and all the other fish that have sustained their people since the beginning of time. It is not a menu choice for our people in British Columbia when it comes to the fisheries. It is who we are. We derive a large portion of our identity, our culture, our traditions, and our values in relationship to the seafoods that we have always harvested. And of course, to have the Leadership Council here in support shows you and demonstrates the importance and the critical nature of this court case, that we continue to push the government to respect their own laws, to respect their own constitution, and to stop the justification of overriding Aboriginal rights of our people. And Canadians need to understand that our Aboriginal rights are not a gift of the Crown, but they are inherent in nature. It is who we are. It is what we have always done. And to stand here is indeed an honor with my family, my Gleeglingwol of the Nuu-chah-nulth, and of course to know that the efforts that have been put forward to look after the ocean and the marine environment and the fisheries, the closing down of the herring fishery. Of course, then we have to speak of the Haitsauk accomplishing the very same. It is not an attack on an industry. It's about the preservation of the sacred resources that are ours to look after for all Canadians. But of course, we must find ways for the government to stop infringing and impeding our ways of life. I do not believe that the government has the authority to freeze our rights in time of some long ago period of our existence, but we evolve, and we must be able to enjoy the bounty of our territories to look after our people beyond food, social, and ceremonial, and so that we can indeed look after our families like in the very same manner that everybody else wants to for our children and grandchildren. And for Canada to make the decision to continue to fight that is in complete opposition to the embracing of the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. And it makes many statements of this Liberal government absolutely hollow and meaningless in terms of the full recognition of our people's inherent nature of our rights, title, and the foods that have sustained us.
Why, peace Naxil, Esquis Asiut. Good morning, everyone. I'm Grand Chief Stuart Phillip. I'm President of the Union of BC Indian Chiefs. And I want to say that it's a great honor to stand here in solidarity with the Nuu-chah-nulth and with the Ahousaht people. Once again, we are faced with challenging the absolute hypocrisy and dishonor of the Crown in regard to acknowledging the victories of Indigenous peoples when we do win in the courts. It is so shoddy and of the Crown and of the government to deliberately frustrate and delay justice after we achieved the victory in the first place. And it's shameful. Shame on Trudeau, shame on the Liberals. They had an opportunity to serve justice to an honorable people, and they chose not to. And that's what brings us to this place once again in our efforts to bring that full measure of justice to the Ahousaht people and to the Nuu-chah-nulth. And as President of the Union of BC Indian Chiefs, and as a member of the BC First Nations Leadership Council, we're so proud to stand here in absolute solidarity. We shall continue our support in the courts, politically, and on the waters, if that comes to be. So we will never, ever give up. Ever will we take a step back until we achieve absolute victory in this case. Why? Lim Lim.
So So thank you to the Union of BC Indian Chiefs on behalf of the Five Nations and Stuart's beautiful wife Joan for their kind words, and on behalf of the Hatwea, the hereditary chiefs of the Five Nations, I just want to say klako to the supporters of from the BC First Nations Leadership Council. With that, next is BCFN, the BC Assembly of First Nations Regional Chief, Terry Teegee.
Wasai, Deneza, Tsekuza, Skyza, Chiefs, hereditary chiefs, guests. First of all, I want to acknowledge the territory, unceded, unsurrendered Coast Salish story of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people. My name is Terry Teegee, Musqueam Simgi, wolf with a white spot on the head. I'm from the Lakshtibu clan, the Wolf clan. I come from 900 kilometers up Klako, what you call the Fraser River. And my people depend on the salmon. And like the Nuu-chah-nulth, since time immemorial, we depended on the salmon. And it has sustained us nutritionally, spiritually, and economically. And I stand here on behalf of the British Columbia Assembly of First Nations to lend my support to the Nuu-chah-nulth people. And a victory to the Nuu-chah-nulth people is not only for the Ahusit and the Five Nations, but for all of us in British Columbia and in Canada. And we plead to the three justices in this building and to the Trudeau government to uphold the decision and the truth. In regards to truth and reconciliation, is that the Nuu-chah-nulth rights have been infringed upon. It had every right to those salmon and to make decisions on those species of salmon and what they decide to. And for Canada to come along and say otherwise is an infringement. So if there's any semblance of reconciliation, and we've seen a lot in the media over the last few weeks, if there's any semblance of reconciliation, the three justices in this building and Trudeau would come to their senses and realize the truth here, that the Nuu-chah-nulth have every right to those salmon and decide how to use those salmon. And that's what the court said a year ago, that's what the court said 10 years ago, and here we are once again. So I come here to lend my support with the First Nations Leadership Council to the Nuu-chah-nulth people, to the 5 communities, and we will fight in the streets, in the courts, and in the water if we have to. So I just want to thank you. It's simply an honor to be here. Masai, Masai Cho.
Thank you, Regional Chief Teegee. Next, from the First Nations Summit, we have Executive Member Robert Phillips.
Wait, Chukwinuk, Squatwin, Robert Phillips from the First Nations Summit. I'm also here on behalf of Grand Chief Ed John and Cheryl Casimir. We give acknowledgements to Tsleil-Waututh, Musqueam, and Squamish. We also give acknowledgements to the hereditary chiefs and to the President, Vice President of the Nuu-chah-nulth, Judith Sayers. We also give acknowledgements to my colleagues and leadership, and as well everybody that's been working on this for 10 years, far too long. And I'll tell you one thing, we might be cold now, but I think we're just warming up. And I think that's something that we're going to have to make sure that we get this to the Prime Minister of Canada, to the Attorney General, to DFO, to all levels of government, especially the bureaucracy that's been holding this back. Not only is it for all of our people, but the 10,000 Nuu-chah-nulth people that rely on the food, social ceremony, as well as the economic fisheries. This is not something that's given to us. It's been given to us by the Creator. It's been given to us because we take care of the land and the resources. And we know that when it comes to fisheries, it is our lifeblood. It is who we are as a people. And we stand there in solidarity. We stand with the Leadership Council, with the hereditary chiefs, with the President, because we know that far too long that this has to change, and the change has to happen right now. If there's going to be any message that needs to get to all levels of government, is we stand together and we will make sure that this will happen for your people. Cooksjam, thank you.
So before we go to our last speaker for today, I just want to, I was asked to make sure we share who the interveners and the supporters of the Five Nations, including the BC Assembly of First Nations, Union of BC Indian Chiefs, First Nations Summit, First Nations Fisheries Council, and we have representatives from the Tumuk Treaty Association, the National Assembly of First Nations, Listagouche Government, the Nuu-chah-nulth Tribal Council, and as well as I see from the Haida Nation as well. So with that, I want to introduce Nuu-chah-nulth's biggest supporter in Ottawa, our MP from Courtney Alberni, who's stood with our people for a number of years and continues to push in Ottawa on behalf of all Nuu-chah-nulth. MP for Courtney Alberni, Gord Johns.
Thank you. I also would like to pay respect to the nations, the Squamish, Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, for allowing us to do our business here today. I also would like to acknowledge and pay respect to the Taihawiya, the Nuu-chah-nulth leadership, all of the Nuu-chah-nulth people, the elders, for their strength, their perseverance through this long battle. You know, I see the Prime Minister rise regularly in the House of Commons, talk about Canada's Indigenous people being his most important relationship and his priority. And here we see the government using all of their resources to fight the Nuu-chah-nulth people. Canadians, all Canadians should be horrified that their tax dollars are being used to hire government lawyers to fight Indigenous people in this country. Resources that can be used for reconciliation, to help empower people and see Nuu-chah-nulth people back on the water where they belong. Governing's about choices, and this Prime Minister promised that he'd change the precedent in this country. Instead, he's chosen to follow the path of Stephen Harper and the Harper Conservatives. Today, the Prime Minister is here, and I hope he can hear us, because he's here to meet big corporations instead of being at the table meeting the Nuu-chah-nulth, the most important relationship that this government professes. They have an opportunity to fix this. And I hope in the next few days we'll see the government lawyers back off. What we learned from the outcome a year ago is instead the government lawyers were given the direction to come to the table, empty-handed, DFO, to negotiate in bad faith, to fight them at every opportunity and try to diminish the rights of the Nuu-chah-nulth people and put their foot on the throat of the Nuu-chah-nulth people. Well, they won't give up. And when coastal people are out fishing, when Nuu-chah-nulth people are out fishing, everybody wins. And there will be a victory. There will be a victory here. And everybody will celebrate. But it's time. It's time for the Prime Minister to intervene now, to stop wasting Canadian taxpayers' money, to stop attacking the Nuu-chah-nulth people and honor the Constitution, honor the Charter of Rights, and respect his words, and bring meaning to those words that he's promised. Clico.
All right, everybody. So just in closing, we want to thank everybody for coming out, even though it's freezing outside and there's snow everywhere. The Five Nations want to thank everybody, as well as I forgot to mention the Heiltsuk people. Reg Moody is here on behalf of the Heiltsuk people who have been standing with us for a number of years. So just in closing, before we go to a song, our nations want to sing this victory, this important song, this warrior song, and a reminder to the government, as Gord said, Gord Johns said, that there's still conservative type arguments being pushed by the Liberal government in the courts and at the negotiation table, but our nations are here to win, and we're here to send our victory song. So thank you everybody for coming out today. Chu, kuko, kuko.
Have a good night.